I hope you like wrestling pay-per-views, because not only do we have Under Siege happening tomorrow night, then on Sunday we have WrestleMania Backlash, then in a couple of weeks we've got Double or Nothing, and it never stops there. You'll go to sleep, you'll wake up, and all of a sudden it'll be Money in the Bank, and you'll just question, where on earth do they all keep coming from? But I do enjoy being sports entertained. But in saying that, I have no idea whether I had fun or not until I consult this guy, the finger of power, the fop, because he gives the good bits an up and he gives the bad bits a down when it comes to professional wrestling. If you're now looking at me going, that's an adult who pretends that his hand is like independent of him, you would be totally correct. I'm a strange individual. But Impact had a show, let's up those doubts. We had to find a new women's knockout #1 contender for that Under Siege show I was just talking about. So Impact decided, well, we're going to take Havoc and we're going to take Rosemary. And given that they had a bit of a tete-a-tete last week, here they shall have a match, and whoever wins will go on to Saturday night to take on Deonna Purrazzo. And despite the fact that both characters are a little bit weird, I mean, go and show Rosemary to someone that's never checked out professional wrestling before, they do have somewhat of a history, so they kind of cancelled each other out here because they knew what the other one was going to do. It was at this point, though, when Havoc went, well, I do understand she's still a human being. She has a skull. Maybe if I just smash her in that, something will happen. And it did work, and all of a sudden she was in control. And I actually think she was trying to break Rosemary's face. Rosemary is a very experienced professional wrestler, though, so she was able to mount a comeback and even hit a spear for a very close near two. And I think Havoc got a bit bored, so she picked her up and she gave her the tombstone pile driver. And again, don't forget where the focus of the action had been. And that really was that. So at Under Siege, we are going to get Deonna Purrazzo taking on Havoc with Steven Seagal as the special guest referee. Something I said there is not true. I will leave it to you to figure it out, but up. Deonna and her minions were then out to try and beat up the new challenger, but not only did this not happen, Rosemary fought off Kimberly and Susan before Purrazzo then also got tombstone pile driven. And I tell you, that move, I know it's synonymous with The Undertaker, but it always looks so flippin' badass. I will say that Impact didn't do a great job in making me think that Deonna Purrazzo is going to lose, and by the way, she wouldn't, but this was simple and this was effective, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. Had an interview with the Elite afterwards, and Kenny Omega was stood there wearing every single one of the World Championships that he has recently won, and he looked like a tin can. They're also talking about the fact that the Good Brothers are back, or at least that they may finally have some momentum. Kenny took credit for all of this because, of course, last week he had said, I am going to start coaching you, and maybe I'm seeing what I want to see, but I don't think Karl Anderson is completely into this. I think he's a little bit upset. They then stormed off because they do have a match later, but not before Kenny Omega returned to interviewer Gia Miller and just gone, you can't be in the Elite, you're not good enough. I don't even think she wanted to be. That was quite funny. We were then not mucking around when it came to the X Division title, because we had El Phantasmo versus Rohit Raju versus P.E. Williams, who just returned from nowhere, versus Ace Austin versus TJP versus AC Romero, and whoever the hell won would get a shot at that X Division belt at Under Siege. Now, you are more within your rights to question some of these guys and go, well, why the hell did they get an opportunity? But honestly, this was so enjoyable, I don't even give a hoot up. Given that Romero is like 3 times the size of everybody else in this match, everybody went after him to begin with, but in the ring, that meant El Phantasmo and TJP could go at it a little bit. And the way this ended, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in my life. Because as everybody else brawled on the floor, I think ELP realised, well, that's where I want to be. So not only did he walk halfway around the ring on the top rope and just jump over an attack from P.T. Williams before he landed back on the top rope, but he then met Ace Austin on the turnbuckle and gave him a DVD from there to the floor and into a couple of other people. If you don't plan to go and watch this today, well, you're perfectly within your rights to do that. You may have better things to do, but if you don't, put it on your list. I don't know what the flub this was, and I don't know how it's flubbing possible. Because it was a 6-man, we then paired off into pairs, obviously. So we got to see Rohit Raju and TJP go at it for a little bit, and then Austin and ELP tried to take out Romero, when all of a sudden P.E. Williams was back, and he smashed out the Canadian Destroyer onto ELP. Sadly, I think the Canadian forgot that it was 2021, and that move doesn't beat anybody. El Phantasmo kicked out. Everyone was then hitting their big moves because I think they were so inspired about what Petey had just done, but those were either stopped or straight out reversed when El Phantasmo once again decided, man, I'm done with this. He hit the CR2 or the CL2, whatever the hell he calls his big move, onto Petey Williams, and he got the 1-2-3, which means he's only been in Impact for like a cup of coffee, and now he's going to be taking on Josh Alexander at the pay-per-view. This rocked though, the pace of the thing was absolutely ridiculous, and more important than that, it was fun. And never forget the word fun is the most forgotten word in professional wrestling. More setting up for Under Siege next because Susan and Kimberly went to Scott D'Amore and said, look at this phone. Do you see what happened last week when we were trying to take on Taylor Wilde? Tenille Dashwood got involved, she cheated, so now we want to have a tag team match. And Scott D'Amore said, okay. We then had our weekly Violent by Design video, and I don't know what the hell Eric Young was going on about. I do know he was upset with Rhino because he lost last week, but then he said the reason for it is the sickness embedding the root. You kind of sound like a drug dealer. These are just so well shot though, and the delivery is so good, I don't even care. I have no idea what's coming out of his mouth. I enjoy Violent by Design so much that if he one day turned up in Dynamite, I wouldn't mind it at all. Very sadly, I can't see that happening. But I guess they are going to pick a new victim soon. Who the hell knows who it's going to be? Then everything, and I mean literally everything, happened in Swingers Palace to the point I may not recount it correctly. But TJP was putting a bet on himself to become a tag team title contender, even though we had just seen TJP in a number one's contenders match for the X Division Championship. Ace Austin and Madman Fulton also wanted to be considered for this, as did Rohit Raju and Mahabali Shera, and somehow they then talked themselves into this while I think everybody else started to place bets. This will be a good match too, but it was such an odd way to set it up, especially when Petey Williams just walked on there and pretended he was going to do the Scott Steiner math thing, but he's now going to team up with TJP. And again, how did they go from X Division match, like 37 seconds to go, to all of a sudden, oh, now I want to be in a tag team? This honestly hurt my brain. And once again, maybe that's not what happened. I think everyone was just shouting at everybody else at some point. So I gotta give it a down. Then poor Sam Beale. After he was essentially murdered by W. Morrissey last week, Impact went, well, why don't you come back and you can take on Willie Mack, who of course is taking on Morrissey at the pay-per-view to see how you do against him. The answer was not great. Because once more, he just got killed. I mean, he had a little bit of a flutter here and there, but essentially Willie Mack had his way with him. He hit the 6-star Frog Splash, 1, 2, 3, and that was that. But look, this is what you want to do. We are building to Morrissey versus Willie Mack at Under Siege, so now they're kind of on par with each other, so we can have it up. Morrissey attacked everybody afterwards to let you know I'm a really tall guy, even though nobody taught me that. So this was Professional Wrestling 101, and I imagine Morrissey will win on Saturday night, and then maybe he goes after the world title or something. Who the hell knows? We had a rebuttal promo from Finn Juice after this, along with Eddie Edwards, and the short story is they all really hate Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, therefore they've got a big kendo stick and they're going to slam him in the head. It was still called Kenny, which of course is their own version of Kenny, because for some reason wrestlers, especially Eddie Edwards, love naming these kind of objects. Tenille Dashwood's All About Me show was then back. I don't think we've seen this for about a month. She was interviewing Taylor Wilde, mostly so Taylor could say, look, I will accept Susan's challenge from earlier, but it's nothing to do with you, Tenille. I don't like you, I think you're a moron, and I don't even appreciate being in your presence. Because Tenille Dashwood does have a great character though, all of this just went over her head because of course she is an egomaniac. That does make that whole side set we did when she took on Deanna Purrazzo all the more strange, because for like 1 week she was just meant to be a normal good guy. But I would presume that Taylor Wilde and Tenille Dashwood fall out at Under Siege, and then they do a one-on-one program, and that will be fine as well. Dave Finlay was then taken on Karl Anderson, and of course everybody came out with their own entourages. So we had Kenny Omega, we had Karl Anderson, and we had Eddie Edwards, and we had Juice Robinson. Before you could say boo to a goose, Kenny Omega and Juice Robinson were interfering because they were tripping up their respective opponents, and the referee lost control of this so early, he was just spinning around and he was yelling at Juice and Eddie Edwards, and of course the Elite just jumped all over that. They were beating up David Finlay, and I was like, man, who booked this official? He is doing a terrible job. Anderson then took over for a while before of course Finlay fought his way back into it, including getting some shots on Kenny Omega and the LG. But when he did get Karl Anderson in the Indian Deathlock, Kenny Omega kind of rolled in. He didn't even seem like he was that bothered about it. And he attacked Finlay, so it caused the disqualification. Now, the good guys did beat all the bad guys up to finish this. So they all ran away recording like, oh no, I can't believe what happened, which is a nice and simple thing to do as we are leading into Under Siege. But something about this really didn't just work, and it was kind of just there. I think it's probably because when they all clashed last week, it ended with a distraction, and then this week it ended with a disqualification. And as a wrestling fan who does watch a lot of wrestling, that kind of finish is just getting really, really old. That's why he's got to get it down. Chris Sabin promo next. He was looking right into the camera as I'm doing now, and he admitted that he felt very bad for not helping out James Storm after Moose was absolutely destroying him. And that is true, Chris. So your apologies are a little bit late. He is going to be in the big six-man tag main event, though, where hopefully at some point he will take on Moose. So he's going to try and take him down. And I chuckled to myself and I was like, well, when I tuned into Impact today, I didn't know that murder was on the cards. Went straight to Jordine Grace and Rachel Ellering after this, who were having a conversation backstage. And I actually quite like the story we've put in place here. It actually has some depth. Because Fire and Flavor has spent the last few weeks going, look, Jordine, you are clearly the weak link of the team. And now Grace's confidence has been knocked. She is starting to believe it. Ellering tried to tell her this wasn't true and they'll prove it at Under Siege when they retain their titles, but you could absolutely do something with this. Now, don't take the championships off them, but kind of come up with a swerve at some point and surprise me. I will give you a tick in the box. Given that we've had all this madness between Brian Myers and Decay recently, all of a sudden it was announced, hey, our next match is Brian Myers versus Crazy Steve. And honestly, when it comes to Mr. Myers, he goes through feuds like anybody. Ever since we sat down and started watching Impact properly, I think he must have around about 8,429. This was actually quite different though, so I enjoyed it, because early on, Brian Myers was like, that black Taurus pushed me, so the referee sent him to the back, even though he got nowhere close to them. So this was Brian Myers being a massive dick. The Crazy One still had moments of hope, and they actually had quite a decent contest before Brian used the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. But just to be an extra goof, he grabbed the ropes, and ain't nobody kicking out of that. It is the most devastating move with a little extra kick. I will say that it was kind of unexpected and did come out of nowhere, but then Impact had this great shot where as Brian Myers was celebrating, Black Taurus just reappeared in the ring and absolutely murked him, and those two are going to have a match at the pay-per-view. I was actually quite surprised with this. It put a smile on my face, and I'm going to give it an up. I do want to point out that too many matches on the Under Siege card have just come from moments that happened on this damn show. You need to give them a little bit more build, but it also kind of feels like not a top-tier pay-per-view. So maybe it's fine. But talking about the planting of seeds, I think we then did that when it came to the Impact executives. Because Scott D'Amore found Don Callis and got right in his face and said, look, all of your shenanigans are now ruining our show. Moose took out James Storm last week because you went and wound up Moose, so I think you need to start making some damn decisions. Because Scott basically wants Don to decide, are you trying to help our company or are you part of Kenny Omega's family? I don't think you can do both of these, so I've got my eye on you, and again, I expect a decision yesterday. Callis looked less than impressed with this, and of course he's never going to turn his back on Kenny Omega, so something is building here, and I don't know what it is, but does it make me want to watch the TV show? Yes, it does. So it was the right thing to do. We then had our big six-man tag main event, which of course featured all the guys that are going to be in the six-way match at Under Siege, fighting to become the #1 contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. So we had Moose teaming up with Sami Callihan, teaming up with Chris Bey to take on Trey, Miguel, Matt Cardona, and very sad and sorry Chris Sabin. The best part of all of it though is that while everybody shined a little bit to begin with, when Moose got in there, everything just hit the wall as he took control. I mean, poor Trey Miguel got absolutely destroyed by him, and at some point in 2021, Moose needs to be the world champion. We have done such a good job with him. It also allowed the heels to beat up on Trey Miguel for a while because he was doomed, but because of this and because he was in a tag team match, all of a sudden his hand turned into the power of the hot tag and he gave this to Matt Cardona, who somehow knew to run wild. It was at this point that the ever-present ever-present pro wrestling klaxon sounded, ha, which lets everybody in a big six-man tag know now's the time to get in the ring and hit your big move. And look, while I take the mick out of this, it's always fun and it's always chaotic. It came down to Chris Sabin and Sami Callihan of all people, and Sami Callihan looked in a world of trouble as Chris Sabin was about to hit the magistral cradle, but Sami stopped it. He reversed into the package pile driver, and the referee went 1, and the referee went 2, and the referee went 3. And I always question somebody that wins at the go-home show before a pay-per-view. I'm like, is that good for you? Or did you just get the victory because you're not actually going to win the belt? The last few minutes of this was really good though, and well worth your time if you want some wrestling to watch today. And at the end, Sami Callihan and Moose stared at each other as we saw Don Callis in the back, who didn't look pleased at all. In fact, he looked damn right terrified. My big question is, what are we going to do here? There's no way Moose is going to be affiliated with anybody, because that doesn't work. But can I see Sami Callihan maybe joining the ranks of Don Callis and the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega? I think that I can. Or once again, maybe I'm just seeing what the hell I want to see. Either way, like I say, it should be Moose that goes out there and wins this World Championship back at some point. And as ever, very easy to watch episode of Impact. Even if you've never seen it, you could sit down and they introduce you into it oh so gently. It's nice, a nice back rub, and that's why I'm giving it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com. Keep up to date with wrestling so you can talk about it on the internet. And while you're on the internet, come give us a follow on social media. And you're already on the internet, so click a box around me and you can watch another video on the internet. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. Make sure you have a damn good day, and I'll see you when our eyes lock once more.